What is a pyranometer?
A pyranometer, also called a solarimeter, is an instrument that measures the amount of sunshine reaching the ground. Pyranometer comes from the Greek words pyr, meaning fire, and ano, meaning sky. The instruments record the amount of sunlight in terms of watts per square meter. And they calculate this in one of two ways. A less accurate method used in cheaper models of pyranometers detects light using small silicon-based photodetectors. This method is not considered to be ideal because such photodetectors do not capture the full spectrum of sunlight very well. The other type of pyranometer uses a thermopile, which is a collection of highly sensitive thermocouples that detect temperature changes across junctions. Pyranometers can be used to evaluate weather conditions and, when readings are taken over extended periods of time, changes in climate.
What is dew?
Dew is water vapor that has condensed onto cool surfaces. Usually, this happens overnight as air temperatures cool. And then the dew evaporates as the day progresses.
What is a fumarole?
Volcanic gases escape from fumaroles, or vents, around volcanically active areas. They can occur along tiny cracks or long fissures in a volcano, in groups called clusters or fields, and on the surfaces of lava and pyroclastic flows. Fumaroles have been known to last for centuries. They can also disappear in a few weeks or months if their source cools quickly. For example, Yellowstone National Park and the Kilauea volcanoes have many fumaroles and associated deposits. Some have been there for years, while others have just recently appeared.
What is lightning?
Lightning is an electrical discharge occurring in the atmosphere. It comes in many forms and the manner in which it works is only now becoming fully understood.
How much pollution is generated by airplanes?
At any given moment in time, there are about 5,000 non-military aircraft flying the skies over the United States. It takes a tremendous amount of fuel to keep all these transports aloft. And the burned fuel results in exhaust similar to that coming from car engines, nitrogen oxides, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, and soot. In addition, water vapors are released, which form ice crystals at high elevations commonly called contrails. Meteorologists believe that these contrails increase the formation of cirrus clouds, which may contribute to global warming.
What is light pollution?
While not harmful to people or other living things, light pollution is an annoyance to astronomers. Light from cities makes it difficult to see stars and other heavenly bodies at night, which is why observatories are stationed on top of mountains and hills outside of urban areas. It is also why space observatories such as the Hubble telescope are so important for astronomers.
What is the Coriolis effect?
Named after French mathematician scientist Gustave Coriolis, 1792–1843. Who first explained it in 1835, the Coriolis effect refers to the way objects appear to move in a curving or circular pattern when observed from a point of view position that is rotating. Imagine yourself standing next to a playground carousel. Two of your friends are riding on opposite sides of the carousel as it spins around. One friend holds a ball and tries to roll it to the person on the other side. But as he does so, the ball seems to veer to one side and roll off the carousel. To your point of view, as you stand off to the side, however, the ball rolled in a straight line. But it did not reach your other friend because as the ball moved across the carousel moved beneath it and the intended receiver was no longer in the original position. Now imagine the Earth as it spins on its axis. Above the Earth, suspended in the atmosphere, is a forming hurricane. The air around the hurricane is moving toward the eye, which is where the lowest air pressure is. However, as the air moves toward the eye, it is deflected to the right. In the northern hemisphere, by the Earth's spin, or to the left, in the southern hemisphere. This causes the hurricane clouds to rotate counterclockwise in the north and clockwise in the south.
What are some cloud-to-space forms of lightning that are not considered to be true lightning?
There are 4 types of electrical phenomena that have been observed that are not really lightning but still involve fascinating atmospheric displays. Called transient luminous events or TLEs, they are usually seen during storms. They are sometimes called cloud-to-space lightning, though they do not actually originate within clouds. The first scientific paper on these phenomena was published in 1886, but scientists were not very interested in the subject until more recently, as photographic images became increasingly available. 1. Sprites, often reddish lights appearing above thunderstorms for very brief periods of time. Sprites look kind of like jellyfish. They have a blob of light on top and numerous tendrils descending downward. Sprites can shoot 55 to 60 miles, about 90 to 95 kilometers. up into the atmosphere, reaching the ionosphere, and extend 100 miles, 161 kilometers, across. They are very difficult to see, and for that reason were not reliably recorded until the 1980s. 2. Blue jets, blue lightning that emerges from the tops of thunderstorm clouds at speeds of about 62 miles. 100 kilometers per hour. Meteorologists still do not fully understand what causes blue jets. 3. Elves, a short name for a very long-winded description. Elves are emissions of light and very low frequency. VLF, perturbations from electromagnetic pulse, EMP, sources. Appearing as giant rings that expand up to 200 miles, 320 kilometers, in diameter. Elves exist in the upper atmosphere at elevations of 55 to 60 miles, 90 to 95 kilometers. Even more short-lived than sprites, they last about 1/1000th of a second. 4. Tigers, first observed on January 20, 2003. This newest atmospheric light phenomenon has still not been adequately explained by scientists. Tiger stands for transient ionospheric glow emission in red, and were first observed with the use of an infrared video camera over the Indian Ocean by Elon Ramon, an Israeli astronaut aboard the Space Shuttle Columbia, which later exploded, killing the crew. The tigers that Ramon observed occurred as bright flashes when there was no thunderstorm activity nearby.
What is SODAR?
If LiDAR is light radar, then you can probably guess that SODAR is sound radar. SODAR stands for sound detection and ranging. It is different from sonar in that sonar uses sound waves traveling through water, whereas SODAR is detecting the reflection of sound waves through the air. By calculating the Doppler shift of sound waves, SODAR can be used for evaluating wind speeds and direction, as well as temperature inversions and other types of turbulence.
What is a whiteout?
An official definition for whiteout does not exist. It is a colloquial term that can describe any condition during snowfall that severely restricts visibility. That may mean a blizzard, or snow squall, etc. if you get some sunlight in the mix. That makes the situation even worse. It's like driving in fog with your headlights on high beam. The light gets backscattered right into your eyes and you can't see.
Is it dangerous to touch a person who has just been struck by lightning?
No. A common myth is that people who have been hit by lightning maintain a dangerous electrical charge that can be transmitted to someone else who touches the victim. Actually, no such residual charge will remain, and it is safe to touch them and give them medical assistance.
What is an ice storm?
Ice storms account for some of the most dangerous winter conditions one can experience. Ice storms occur when freezing rain accumulates on the ground, building up layers of glaze or rime that coat everything, from roads to buildings to telephone lines and vegetation. Naturally, this makes driving extremely hazardous, and many people have lost their lives while traveling in ice storms. Airports will often cancel flights as ice forming on wings can prevent airplane wing flaps from moving, even when workers repeatedly de-ice them. Ice storms can down power lines and even cause older trees to collapse under the sheer weight of frozen water. For example, a tree 50 feet tall with a branch circumference averaging 20 feet can be weighed down by 10,000 pounds. About 4,500 kilograms of ice as a result of an ice storm.
What is global warming?
Global warming and the greenhouse effect are not necessarily the same thing. While the greenhouse effect can cause global warming, other things can lead to the planet warming or cooling. Other factors include changes in geography, plate tectonics, and cycles of the Earth's orbit around the Sun. It is known that global warming is necessary to a certain point, without the ability of certain gases in the Earth's atmosphere to help retain radiation from the Sun, our planet would be a cold ice ball in space. These gases act like the glass of a greenhouse, thus the name greenhouse gases, trapping much of the energy emitted from or bounced off the ground and keeping our world warm. This, in turn, allows organisms, plants, animals, and otherwise to live. More recently, global warming has been used to describe the unnatural increase in the average surface temperatures around the world. Many scientists, and others, believe humans have pumped excess amounts of greenhouse gases, such as carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrogen oxides, into the atmosphere, causing temperatures to rise. Something has already raised the surface temperatures about 0.5 degrees Celsius 1 degree Fahrenheit. In the past 100 years, and scientists believe it to be human-induced.
What is evapotranspiration?
Evapotranspiration is the combination of water vapor being evaporated from the surface of the Earth, such as from lakes, rivers, or puddles, into the atmosphere, and transpiration, which is the movement of water from plants to the air.
Does all precipitation reach the ground?
No. Rain and other precipitation can often evaporate before reaching the ground, especially when the air is dry, Low humidity. In the American Southwest, dry storms can be quite common, creating lightning and thunder but little precipitation. The danger of evaporating rain is that it can create conditions conducive to downdrafts and microbursts by cooling the air and causing changes in air pressure. Dry storms thus signal a warning to aviators about potential flying hazards.
What is the AMS Seal of Approval program?
The AMS seal of approval is given to forecasters in the media who provide useful and accurate information about the weather. Part of the intention here is to recognize broadcast meteorologists who do more than just read National Weather Service copy on the air. The seal, therefore, is a service to audiences so that they may discern whether they are receiving their information from a certified professional, or simply from a news reader. A meteorologist may receive a seal either in radio or television broadcasting. They are eligible for the seal based on the quality of the information they provide, their professionalism, their demonstrated effort to continue their education in the field, and their participation as an AMS member. Their qualifications are reviewed by a certifying board committee. Finally, the seal is not bestowed permanently, but must be renewed annually.
What is the effect of global warming and climate change on average temperatures?
By the year 2100, relative to 1990, world temperatures could rise from 2 to 11.5 degrees Fahrenheit. 1.1 to 6.4 degrees Celsius, and sea levels may rise about 3 to 5 feet, 1 or 2 meters.
What is the difference between a tornado watch and a warning?
A tornado watch means that weather conditions within the next few hours are favorable for the formation of tornadoes. When a watch is issued, it is wise to listen to radio or television reports for updates. And you should make any preparations necessary in case you need to seek immediate shelter. A tornado warning means that an actual tornado has been spotted on Doppler radar or by an observer in your area, and you should immediately take shelter.
What were the fastest winds ever recorded?
During a tornado strike in Moore, Oklahoma, on May 3, 1999, a wind speed of 318 miles, 512 kilometers per hour was estimated by video recordings showing debris movement. Other incredible winds include a measurement of 268 miles, 431 kilometers per hour during a tornado incident in Red Rock, Oklahoma, on April 26, 1991. Not all wind records require tornadoes, though. Mount Washington in New Hampshire is considered one of the windiest places on Earth. Winds frequently blow there at speeds exceeding 100 miles, 160 kilometers per hour, and one gust was recorded at 231 miles, 372 kilometers per hour.
What is a mirage?
As light passes from warm to cool air, or vice versa, light is refracted, causing images to appear in places distant from their actual location. Mirages are frequently seen on hot days and on surfaces such as road pavement, sand, or concrete, where the surfaces are very hot. In such cases, light rays from the distant horizon appear wavy and close up, making it appear as if water is nearby.
We haven't had a nuclear war yet, so what sources are creating radiation pollution?
Man-made radiation in the atmosphere comes from primarily two sources: nuclear weapons testing and leakage from nuclear reactors, the latter mostly a result of nuclear plant accidents. After the United States invented the atomic and hydrogen bombs, there was extensive testing from 1945 through 1968. Over 300 warheads were detonated during that time, mostly in desert regions and on small Pacific islands. The result was huge quantities of radioactive isotopes being spewed into the air, including carbon-14, strontium-90, iodine-131, and cesium-137. While precautions were taken by the military so that no one was killed in the initial blasts, radioactivity in the air traveled on wind currents and poisoned areas hundreds of miles from the tests. For instance, 2 days after a May 1953 test in Nevada, radioactive hail, some stones the size of tennis balls, fell in Washington, D.C. Later, the United States tested nuclear weapons underground in an effort to curtail this air pollution, but, of course, the radioactive wastes of subterranean nuclear explosions can easily make their way into underground water supplies. Other nations, too, have conducted nuclear weapons tests over the years, contributing to the problem.
How hot is lightning?
The temperature of the air around a bolt of lightning is about 54,000 degrees Fahrenheit. 30,000 degrees Celsius, which is 6 times hotter than the surface of the sun. In cloud-to-ground lightning, energy seeks the shortest route to Earth, which could be through a person's shoulder, down the side of the body, through the leg, and into the ground. As long as the lightning does not pass across the heart or spinal column, the victim can usually survive.
Why is the sunniest place on Earth also the coldest?
Because of the Earth's tilt. Antarctica receives more rays from the sun than any other land mass on the planet. However, because the continent is covered in snow, the white stuff reflects much of that energy back into the atmosphere, 50 to 90% of it, in fact. Thus, Antarctica is extremely cold. This was not always the case, though. Millions of years ago, during the Jurassic period, Antarctica was much closer to the equator. Indeed, scientists are discovering dinosaur fossils there.
What is a willy willy?
Willy Willy is the Australian name for a tornado or dust devil.
Who are storm chasers?
Storm chasers are scientists and amateur storm enthusiasts who track and intercept severe thunderstorms and tornadoes. Two reasons for storm chasing are, 1, to gather data to use in researching severe storms, and 2, to provide a visual observation of severe storms indicated on radar stations. In addition, television personnel will chase storms to produce a dramatic storm video. Storm chasing can be an extremely dangerous activity in which strong winds, heavy rain, hail, and lightning threaten one's safety. Individuals who chase storms are trained in the behavior of severe storms. Roger Jensen, 1933 to 2001, is generally considered the first person to be an active storm chaser. A self-trained weather observer and professional photographer, Jensen spent 50 years recording data on tornadoes as well as thunderstorms. David Hoadley, 1938, is also considered a pioneer in the field and founder of the first newsletter on the subject, Storm Track. The first scientist who became a storm chaser was Neil Ward, 1914 to 1972, who worked for the National Severe Storms Laboratory in Norman, Oklahoma, and is considered the official father of the storm chase because of his credentials.
What is transportation forecasting?
Most people are probably familiar with this specialty in forecasting, which helps warn car drivers and truckers that road conditions could be hazardous. It also helps prepare local governments to clear streets and freeways, spray road salt or sand, and have law enforcement and emergency personnel ready for emergencies. On the business level, weather forecasts can warn shipping companies, for instance, not to ship perishable products in unrefrigerated or unheated trucks. Shipments by rail also need to be ready for unfavorable weather conditions. Some larger companies rely on private forecasting firms to provide them with timely advisories.
What is an isobar?
An isobar is a line indicating on a weather map the point where the air pressure is the same, i.e., lines of equal pressure. Isobars are a convenient way to locate cold and warm fronts on a map and regions of high and low pressure.
What is the storm of the century?
Over the years, a number of storms have been called storms of the century. The 20th century experienced several storm events that could certainly qualify, or at least be nominated, for this honor. A huge blizzard struck the Midwest from January 10 to 11, 1975, that included snowfalls in Nebraska reaching 19 inches, 48 centimeters, deep, wind chills of -80 degrees Fahrenheit, -62 degrees Celsius, in the Dakotas, and wind bursts of 90 miles, 145 kilometers, per hour in Iowa. 80 lives were lost as a result of this storm. Another candidate for the title arrived on stage in 1993, when a blizzard struck the American East Coast, killing 318 people, including 48 at sea. 50% of the American population was affected in some way by the storm. The storm reached from Maine to Florida, where half a foot of snow even fell in the Florida Panhandle. And even Daytona Beach saw freezing temperatures. Winds near Key West raged at up to 109 miles, 175 kilometers, per hour. Meanwhile, Mount LeConte, Tennessee, saw 56 inches, 142 centimeters, of snow. And in Syracuse, New York, there was 43 inches, 109 centimeters, of the white stuff. The 1993 storm ranged far beyond U.S. borders, however, extending north to Canada and south all the way to Central America. At its peak, it reached the strength of a Category 3 hurricane, and by the time it was over it had dumped 44 million acre-feet. About 14.3 trillion gallons, or 54.3 trillion liters, of water onto the ground. Add to this several killer tornadoes. And perhaps the 1993 storm wins the 20th century's title as Storm of the Century.
Does Earth's magnetic field ever change?
Yes, the magnetic field is constantly changing, though very slowly. The magnetic poles actually drift several kilometers each year, often in seemingly random directions. Over thousands of years, the strength of the magnetic field can go up and down significantly. Even more amazing, Earth's magnetic field can reverse directions. The North magnetic pole becomes the South magnetic pole, and vice versa. According to scientific measurements, our planet's magnetic field last had a polarity reversal about 800,000 years ago.
What is a comet?
Comets are basically snowy dirt balls or dirty snowballs, clumpy collections of rocky material, dust, and frozen water, methane, and ammonia that move through the solar system in long, highly elliptical orbits around the Sun. When they are far away from the Sun, comets are simple, solid bodies, but when they get closer to the Sun, they warm up, causing the ice in the comet's outer surface to vaporize. This creates a cloudy coma that forms around the solid part of the comet, called the nucleus. The loosened comet vapor forms long tails that can grow to millions of miles in length.
What is emergency response planning?
Most disasters in the United States, about 85%, occur because of the weather, with the rest due to such geologic events as volcanic eruptions and earthquakes, or acts of terrorism. In an effort to minimize the costs of such tragedies, a system connecting federal, state, and local agencies has been established to issue weather warnings, plan evacuation routes, and coordinate relief efforts. Community awareness programs, building code enforcement, and computer modeling are all employed in this effort, with meteorologists naturally playing a key role.
During what part of a thunderstorm's duration is there the most risk of being struck by lightning?
Statistics show that more people are hit by lightning strokes toward the end of a thunderstorm. This is not because there is more lightning at that time, but rather because people get too anxious to go outside before the storm is completely over.
Who discovered the ozone layer?
In 1913, French physicists Henri Buisson, 1873–1944, and Charles Fabry, 1867–1945, full name: Marie-Paul Auguste Charles Fabry, theorized that an ozone layer existed in the upper atmosphere. It was confirmed in a series of measurements of ultraviolet radiation, levels that were recorded by W. N. Hartley and A. Cornu from 1879 to 1881.
How did lightning cost New York City $1 billion?
A lightning stroke took out a major New York City power line in July 1977, resulting in a blackout that lasted for an entire day. The looting and losses to businesses, in addition to the repairs needed, were estimated to cost the city about $1 billion.
What are tides?
Tides are the consequence of any two objects that exert gravitational pull on one another over a long period of time. Basically, each object gently pulls the other object into an egg-like shape. Because the gravitational acceleration on one side of the object is larger than on the other side. On Earth, the most observable evidence of this gravitational effect is the changing tides we witness.
What is an ENSO neutral year?
An ENSO neutral year is a year during which neither El Niño nor La Niña conditions are present.
Where do haybubs occur?
Derived from the Arabic word hab, meaning to blow, a haybub is a violent dust storm. Haybubs are common in the Sahara Desert, as well as in the deserts of Australia, Asia, and North America.
Are there trees that predict the weather and tell time?
Observing the leaves of a tree may be an old-fashioned method of predicting the weather. But farmers have noted that when maple leaves curl and turn bottom up in a blowing wind, rain is sure to follow. Woodsmen claim they can tell how rough a winter is going to be by the density of lichens on a nut tree. Before the katydid awakes, a black gum tree is able to indicate the oncoming winter. Trees can also be extraordinary timekeepers. Griffonia, in tropical West Africa, has 2-inch, 5 cm, inflated pods that burst with a hearty noise, indicating that it is time for farmers of the Accra Plains to plant crops. Trichilia is a 60-foot, 18-meter, tree that flowers in February and again in August, signaling that it is time, just before the second rains arrive, for the second planting of corn. In the Fiji Islands, planting yams is cued by the flowering of the coral tree.
What caused all the flooding in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina?
Most people now agree that the destruction of New Orleans could have largely been avoided had the canal levees, built by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, been up to the task of controlling the storm surges. Because many of the levees failed, 80% of the city was engulfed in water.
What are the chances that I will be struck by lightning?
The chance of being struck by lightning at least once in your lifetime is about 1 in 600,000.
How was the ozone hole discovered?
The famous meteorologist Gordon Miller, born Dobson, 1889 to 1976, was the first to make accurate measurements of the ozone in the 1920s. But it wasn't until 1979 that the depletion of the ozone was observed at the South Pole by the Nimbus 7 satellite. Today, a network of Dobson spectrophotometers have been set up around the world to monitor changes in the ozone.
What is agricultural forecasting?
Agricultural forecasting concerns itself with predicting weather conditions, especially hail, that can be hazardous to crops, including precipitation, especially hail, extreme hot and cold, and damaging winds. Accurate forecasting in this area is a particular boon to farmers in that meteorologists can help them decide when it is best to harvest or plant, when wind conditions are right to apply pesticides and herbicides, when to set up irrigation systems, or when to turn on wind machines and smudge pots before an oncoming freeze.
How much have disasters cost in recent years to the United States in terms of money and deaths?
Since 1990, natural disasters have cost the United States about $540 billion and nearly 5,000 lives. This period of history unfortunately includes the 2005 Hurricane Katrina disaster, which is responsible for 1,833 deaths and almost $134 billion in damages just by itself. More typically, annual damages inflicted on American soil average about $18 billion annually. This includes damages caused by hurricanes, tornadoes, droughts, floods, blizzards and ice storms, heat waves, wildfires, and other severe conditions.
Do other objects in the solar system have Van Allen belts?
Yes. All the gas giant planets are thought to have such belts. And in Jupiter's magnetic field such belts have been observationally confirmed.
What is air pollution?
Air pollution is caused by many sources. There are natural pollutants that have been around as long as the Earth, such as dust, smoke, volcanic ash, and pollens. Humans have added to air pollution with chemicals and particulates. Due to combustion and industrial activity, anthropogenic sources.
What country can claim to have the worst weather?
That redoubtable distinction goes to the United States of America. Subjected to hurricanes, flooding, drought, heat and cold waves, blizzards. And the worst tornado activity on the planet, the United States experiences more weather disasters than any other nation.
What is a barograph?
Resembling a seismograph, a barograph records changes in air pressure over time. A recording arm with a pen on one end moves side to side. Drawing a line over a paper or foil chart that moves over a rotating barrel.
What is the Kelvin temperature scale?
The Kelvin scale is typically used in laboratories dealing with extremely cold temperatures. 0 degrees Kelvin indicates absolute zero, which is the point at which molecular motion stops. The scale is named after the first Baron Kelvin, William Thomson, 1824 to 1907, who was a British engineer and physicist. Thomson developed the absolute thermometric scale, which used degrees Celsius as its increments and had absolute zero being minus 273 degrees Celsius. The actual figure has now been determined at minus 273.15 degrees Celsius. Such extremes are rarely needed in meteorological studies, however.
Has a hurricane ever made landfall in Southern California?
While tropical storms have, rarely, reached Southern California, there is no record of a hurricane ever reaching the coastline there. A deadly tropical storm took 45 lives in 1939, and Tropical Storm Kathleen caused lots of flooding on September 10, 1976.
Are all asteroids located in the asteroid belt?
No. There are many asteroids in other regions of the solar system. Chiron, for example, which was discovered in 1977, orbits between Saturn and Uranus. Another example is the Trojan asteroids that follow the orbit of Jupiter near Lagrange points, one group preceding the planet, the other following it, and can thus orbit safely without crashing into Jupiter itself.
How do thunderstorms make our planet habitable?
Thunderstorms, of course, usually bring rain or other precipitation with them, which is needed for life on Earth. But other rainstorms can do this as well. What makes thunderstorms particularly unique and important is their role in heat convection. Thunderstorms move warm air from lower elevations to upper elevations. The difference in temperatures between ground level and the Top of thunderstorm clouds can be as much as 200 degrees Fahrenheit 95 degrees Celsius. Causing this air and temperature circulation helps cool our planet by as much as 20 degrees Fahrenheit, 9 to 10 degrees Celsius. Without thunderstorms, therefore, we would already be experiencing global warming. On a scale twice as bad as scientists are forecasting because of climate change.
How much water evaporates from the world's oceans?
Incredibly, over 1.32 x 1017 gallons, 500,000 cubic kilometers of water evaporate from the oceans each year. Fortunately, that water is replenished by 19 x 1017 gallons, 450,000 cubic kilometers, of rain and snowfall, as well as waters draining into the oceans and seas from rivers and streams.
What causes turbulence?
Air turbulence usually occurs in the higher levels of the atmosphere, which is why you don't notice it unless you're in an airplane. It happens when upward and downward moving currents of air mix, convective mixing. This typically is noticed while flying through a cloud or near a jet stream.
What was the 2008 hurricane season like?
After a 2-year lull in 2006 and 2007, 2008 came roaring back as one of the strongest hurricane seasons on record. Although there were no Category 5 hurricanes, there were 2 Category 4s, Ike and Gustav, and 3 Category 3s, Bertha, Omar, and Paloma. Neither Ike nor Gustav made landfall in the United States as Category 5s. But a weakened Hurricane Gustav caused tremendous destruction in Galveston, Texas. About 1,000 deaths resulted from 8 hurricanes, 5 of which were classified as major, Category 3 or 4. There were also 8 strong tropical storms that did not develop into hurricanes. Despite lacking a Category 5 storm, the 2008 season broke the record for most months with a major hurricane, with 5 months including such major storms: July, Bertha, August, Gustav, September, Ike, October, Omar, and November, Paloma. Of these hurricanes, Gustav was the worst for Americans. Galveston had to be evacuated because of a huge storm surge and waves reaching an incredible 50 feet. 15 meters, many people lost their homes.
Am I getting hit by cosmic rays?
Everyone is being struck by cosmic rays all the time, probably about several each second. Ordinarily, the number of cosmic rays that strike you have no negative effect on your health. Even though the energy of these particles is very high, the number of them striking you is relatively low. If you went beyond Earth's magnetosphere, though, your health might be at risk. On Earth's surface, the magnetosphere acts as a shield against cosmic rays by redirecting them toward Earth's magnetic poles. Thousands of miles up, however, the cosmic ray flux on your body would be much higher, and thus cause potentially more damage to your body's cells and systems.
What is the most dangerous month for avalanches?
More avalanches occur during the month of February in the United States than any other month. Colorado, Alaska, and Montana are the states where most avalanche-related deaths happen.
What is an asteroid?
Asteroids are relatively small, compared to moons and planets, rocky objects in our solar system. They range in size from a few feet across to behemoths like Ceres, which is 580 miles, 933 kilometers, in diameter. The majority of asteroids can be found in the asteroid belt, a band of rocks orbiting between Mars and Jupiter. The origin of asteroids remains the subject of scientific study. Astronomers today think that most asteroids are planetesimals, that never quite combined with other bodies to form planets. Some asteroids, on the other hand, may be the shattered remains of planets or protoplanets that suffered huge collisions and broke into pieces. Asteroids range in composition from rubble piles that are loose collections of rock held together by gravity, e.g., the Mathilde asteroid, to solid rock, Eros, to asteroids with high metallic content, Cleopatra. Some asteroids are so large that they exert gravitation and have tiny moons orbiting them.
Who first hypothesized that the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere had something to do with climate change?
Swedish chemist Svante Arrhenius, 1859–1927, was the first to propose that the atmosphere would hold more heat as concentrations of carbon dioxide increased.
What is the hottest place in the United States?
The most inhospitably hot and dry place in America is Death Valley in eastern California. Also the lowest place, at 280 feet below sea level, Death Valley regularly experiences temperatures in the 120s Fahrenheit, high 40s to low 50s Celsius, and higher. and the valley sees temperatures above 100 degrees Fahrenheit 37.8 degrees Celsius between 140 and 160 days every year, even in the shade. The record high here has been tallied at 134 degrees Fahrenheit 56.7 degrees Celsius. Annual rainfall in Death Valley is less than 2 inches, 50 millimeters.
Who are some of the unluckiest people when it comes to being struck by lightning?
Park Ranger Roy C. Sullivan, 1912 to 1983, survived being struck by lightning 7 times between 1942 and 1977. This Virginia Ranger was hit once in a car, once in a truck, once while fishing, once while camping, once in his own front yard, once in a ranger station, and once while on top of a lookout tower. Years after his death, he still holds the dubious honor of being the human lightning rod. In another peculiar case, a Midwestern family has had numerous members struck by lightning. One woman had been struck by lightning twice in 1965 and 1995. Her grandfather was killed by a 1921 lightning bolt, while her great-uncle was also killed in the 1920s. Her nephew was temporarily blinded when he was hit. And she also had a cousin who was less seriously injured while holding an umbrella in a storm.
How do you convert inches of mercury to millibars?
When measuring air pressure, sometimes inches of mercury are used, and sometimes millibars. To convert inches of mercury to millibars, multiply the number of inches by 33.863756, or 33.86 will give you an accurate enough measurement. To do the calculation in reverse, multiply millibars by 0.0295301, or 0.03 for an estimate, to give you inches of mercury.
What is a harmattan?
This word refers to the sub-Saharan, west coast winds that are dry, hot, and dusty, but fairly moderate in strength.
Does air pressure change as elevation rises above sea level?
Yes, it does. The higher you go, the less air, or atmospheric, pressure there is. Air pressure is also involved in weather systems. Closer to the ground, air pressure decreases at a rate of about 0.01 inches of mercury for every 10 feet, 3 meters. By the time you are at an elevation of 18,000 feet, 5,500 meters, air pressure is about half what it is at sea level. A low-pressure system is more likely to bring rain and bad weather versus a high-pressure system, which is usually drier.
Are there certain times of the day when tornadoes are more likely to happen?
Tornadoes can occur at any hour of the day, but 40% of them strike between 2 o'clock and 6 o'clock p.m. The danger of a nighttime tornado is that people are often asleep and unprepared for when the warnings are sounded.
Has lightning ever happened during a snowstorm?
Yes, it is possible to have lightning and thunder when it is snowing. In fact, winter storms have been known to produce very powerful lightning strokes.
Who were the first people to successfully forecast a tornado?
U.S. Army officers Ernest Fabush and Robert Miller were the first to correctly predict a tornado would form on March 25, 1948. Recognizing that weather patterns in central Oklahoma were very similar to those that had occurred a few days earlier when a tornado hit Tinker Air Force Base. Fabush and Miller told their superiors and a decision was made to warn residents about the possible threat. A tornado again hit the Tinker base a few hours later.
Who was the first person to seriously study tornadoes?
John P. Finley, 1854 to 1943, an officer in the U.S. Army Signal Service and meteorologist, was the first to write an authoritative book on the subject, Tornadoes, which was published in 1887.
What are lee troughs and lee depressions?
A lee trough, also known as a dynamic trough, is a low-pressure zone that forms downwind from a north-south mountain range. A lee depression is essentially the same thing, except that troughs are long and stretched out, while depressions are well-defined, localized areas of low pressure.
Which continents have the highest and lowest average elevations on the planet?
Antarctica has the highest average elevation, 7,546 feet 2,300 meters above sea level, much of which is due to the permanent glacial ice. Australia has the lowest average, 984 feet 300 meters above sea level.
What is the SPF system?
The Sun Protection Factor, or SPF, rates sunscreens based on how much they shield your skin from ultraviolet radiation. depending on your skin pigmentation and age. An SPF rating of somewhere between 30 and 50 is usually recommended for any lengthy amount of time in the sun. And children, especially, should use higher SPF rated sunscreens. Sunscreen should be applied about a half hour before going outside. If you are unsure about what sunscreen to use, a good idea is to ask your physician or pharmacist.
How loud is thunder?
A clap of thunder can be as loud as 120 decibels, abbreviated dBA, which is as loud as the noise at a rock concert, a chainsaw, or a pneumatic drill.
What is the largest known meteorite to strike Earth in the past 100 million years?
About 65 million years ago, a meteorite about 6 miles, 10 kilometers, across crashed into our planet near what is now southern Mexico. The remnant of this collision is an underwater crater more than 100 miles, 161 kilometers, across. This asteroid, or comet, carried 10 million times more kinetic energy than either the Tunguska or meteor crater impactors. The heat from the explosion probably set the air itself on fire for miles around. It threw so much of Earth's crust into the atmosphere that it blocked most of the sun's light for months. As it fell back through the atmosphere, this debris grew very hot as it landed. It probably set almost every tree, bush, and blade of grass it touched on fire. The ecological catastrophe caused by this titanic meteorite strike was most likely the evolutionary blow that finished off the dinosaurs.
What was the storm that wouldn't die?
In November 1992, Typhoon Gay lasted for days as it traveled thousands of miles across the Pacific Ocean, eventually making landfall in Alaska, British Columbia, and California. At its peak, the storm boasted winds of 200 miles, 322 kilometers, per hour. After making landfall in the United States, it continued across the Great Plains, then regained strength as it reached the East Coast. Here, it became a new storm on December 11 with winds of about 90 miles, 145 kilometers, per hour.
Why are there so many discrepancies in the world records of weather?
The discrepancies in the data reflect the length of time that we use to measure weather phenomena. Some records were set by observing the weather over decades. Others only occurred during the span of a few years or months, or even hours or minutes. Discrepancies also exist because of the various types of instruments that were used over the years, and how they were exposed to the elements.
What was Snowball Earth?
Scientists now believe that at between 2 to 4 times between 850 and 580 million years ago, the planet was covered completely in ice and early life forms were nearly wiped out, a snowball Earth. There are a couple of theories as to why this occurred. One being that the Sun was about 6% cooler than it is today, the other is that the continents had all traveled due to plate tectonics mostly south. Ocean currents traveled easily around the planet without interruption, and volcanic activity dwindled to a minimum. The result was that significantly less carbon dioxide was being generated and expelled into the atmosphere. In addition, the Earth's axis was significantly more tilted at the time, by 54 degrees versus today's 23.5 degrees, causing more drastic seasonal extremes. Once a period of cooling began and ice shelves formed, more of the sun's light was reflected, thus causing the cooling cycle to accelerate more and more until everything was frozen. Early theories about this, proposed by such scientists as George Williams at the University of Adelaide and Joe Kirschvink at the California Institute of Technology, include the effects of plate tectonics as causing massive volcanic eruptions worldwide. This would lead to an extended winter of unprecedented scale that turned Earth into one big frozen lump in space that would last for millions of years. Nearly all life was wiped out. In fact, one matter of debate concerning this theory was that critics felt such a snowball Earth would have extinguished all life. This notion was laid to rest in the 1990s when life was found to thrive near geothermal vents deep under the ocean. The snowball Earth cycle was only broken because volcanic action and plate tectonics would cause carbon dioxide levels to build under the ice, especially since there would be no liquid water to dissolve minerals or aid in the dissipation of CO2 levels. The result would be an inevitable, sudden massive release of CO2 that would lead to a comparatively brief period of extreme heat with temperatures averaging 120 degrees Fahrenheit 50 degrees Celsius. However, the thaw retreated to another snowball period a couple more times over millions of years, before the continents moved into positions that created a more stable geophysical state of the planet. Volcanic activity moderated, as did carbon dioxide levels. Another snowball Earth could happen again, however, as the continents, hundreds of millions of years from now, drift back together to form a new supercontinent.